We started with a very important discussion, namely with the connection between the deadly virus COVID 19 and recent protests that erupted in the US and in Europe. Then we think about consequences for American presidential elections and American politics in general. And lastly, we try to understand Russian deterrence policy in the usage of nuclear weapons. So, enjoy our podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Si Vis Pacem, to our new episode.
Hello there.
And we have new interesting topic that basically emerged really recently.
Yep.
We're gonna discuss, I guess, first topic how protests correlate to COVID-19. Because I
Yeah.
guess we should discuss it. Not so many people discuss it, and
Well, I think we have to. We cannot omit the fact that America is burning right now. First of all,
yeah,
and the fact that what's happening right now kind of goes against what was going on before. So
Yeah.
the entire, maybe let's not call it hysteria, but this movement of stay-at-home social isolation is being basically outtaken by the protests and riots in the U.S. So the narrative changed.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I still remember people talking and saying stuff like this. Well, maybe after, COVID ends, we still gonna wear masks and won't have handshakes and stuff like this because people are gonna worry too much about germs. But now we see it's kind of throughout the world, quarantine can end it and people just, let's go and protest. And I mean, I want to talk about not only about the US, I guess we'll come back to this issue later. I want to talk just about protests and how they relate to COVID because it's basically a worldwide experiment right now whether we're gonna have second wave or not.
And it's a medical experiment, not a social.
Yeah, I mean, to give you perspective, now they have this big protests throughout Europe. I mean, I saw already they happened in Netherlands. Maybe in some Scandinavian countries, probably, I suppose.
We will have some in Germany.
We'll have some in Berlin, Germany tomorrow. Big protests in Berlin. I guess you're going to see these big images of from drones and stuff like this. So yeah, it's a big experiment whether we're going to have second wave. And, for me, it's fascinating how attitudes change. 3 weeks ago, if you go out and I mean, it was illegal to have more than 3 or 4 people together.
It was actually illegal here first in Germany. 2 people was the most.
And throughout Europe, it was approximately the same. But now it's I don't care anymore. Let's protest, which is a little bit strange, and also strange how your attitude and the narrative about virus changed so drastically and so rapidly that no one really expected this, and no one talks about this.
And I wonder why this happened. Is the issue of racism just more emotionally, loaded? So people do not think rationally right now, but just follow their emotions. Or is it something else working here? I cannot really understand what happened. Why did the narrative of the virus and containing it, narrative that this is the most important task that we have right now, and everything else should be, in the background.
Yeah.
Why suddenly the protests and the issue of racism completely overshadowed the issue of the coronavirus?
Yeah, I agree. It's particularly interesting to just observe this. And I think it's understandable in the US, this argument, that the issue of racism prevails in type of COVID virus issue because, we experience racism every day in the US and we should fight with this and stuff like that. But it's kind of not the same in Europe. It's still a different issue in Europe. And we didn't have this case in Europe, so I don't know why people... I mean, first of all, I see 2 issues. First, authorities allow this throughout Europe. I mean, they basically say, well, you can gather, we see it in the Netherlands, we're going to see it tomorrow in Berlin, and in Germany. Well, because it's such an important issue, I mean, I don't see their logic. I have no idea what they're thinking about, and I saw... all these politicians in Europe and Canada, Trudeau, Merkel, just supporting this protest. I find this just silly and just like just jumping on the bandwagon and trying to get like their ratings up. Probably, I don't know what they're doing, but it's definitely not safe to do this because I mean, if you're a politician, you should first of all think about safety of your own people, and and all these talks, especially our healthcare, like healthcare workers, they're heroes. They're like, we should praise them. We should like have some kind of respect to them. But now we already forgot about this because there is still a big chance we still have people getting COVID every day, even before this protest. So I'm pretty sure they're gonna have some spike. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about the scale of the spike, but they're gonna have the spike. And I guess in the US they already notice they notice the spikes, observe the spikes in some American cities.
Yeah, and also it's important to note that as we know, the virus has a long incubation period. So the process has been going for 1-2 weeks.
Yeah.
And since the virus can incubate for 2 weeks, we do not yet know the impact of those protests. So we will slowly get to know, week or two, we will see how this influenced the pandemic situation.
Yeah, exactly. And another thing to mention is just, everyone sacrificed something in order to combat this virus, whether it's your liberty, your work, a lot of things. People sacrifice a lot. Your studies, for example, as students, we still experience digital studies. They're pretty bad.
Oh, yes.
And you have to deal with this because that's how you think about the world. Well, you have to, save other people, and health of other people is more important than my own studies. That you just sacrifice. You have to make this choice.
Of course.
But now, this is very hypocritical to agree with people protesting while you still have some kind of restrictions on movement throughout Europe and whatever. And you're gonna, just basically pass this virus just because you want to protest against racism. This is something really strange for me in how attitudes change so rapidly. It's hard to understand, honestly.
I also wonder, would the same situation occur were it not for the virus? Maybe the killing of George Floyd was just an excuse for people to let out their frustration regarding the coronavirus. They might have lost their jobs, or they were closed in their homes, couldn't get out. This, of course, takes a toll on your mental health. It's obvious. Yeah. And I'm just thinking, maybe people are just frustrated. And the fact that there is now this movement against racism maybe is just an excuse for them to go out and voice their frustration in a way. Yeah. I think that maybe the reactions would be completely different were it not for the virus to the killing of George Floyd.
Yeah, that's true. I actually thought about this because, you combat with this so-called hidden enemy, you couldn't see the virus. And I guess this frustration definitely, it just apparent that this frustration is just among people, and now they want to express this frustration because, probably a lot of people would, disagree with, authorities who basically restricted their liberties for the sake of, health of other people. And they try to express this, and that's why I also think a lot of people didn't really take virus seriously, and they still don't take it seriously because they still go to protests. If you take it seriously, you wouldn't go to protests. This is not rational, and just following your beliefs. So yeah, I don't know. This is happening right now, so we're experiencing history. I guess it's just really important to see, and also to see how it's easy to manipulate people. One day you say, we should all sit at home because there is this virus going on, and you should wear a mask whether you go to a shop or whatever. And now they just basically authorities say, well, you could go to protests because it's against racism, and racism is an important issue. Yeah, and this is just an act of manipulation, which,
Yeah, well, people are very, eager to subscribe to movements or ideologies, especially when they're emotionally, frustrated. Yeah. It's easy to, you just want to be a member of a group or a movement. So first of all, it was the movement of stay at home. People felt good because, I'm staying at home. Maybe it isn't too comfortable for me, but I'm doing something good. So this made them feel good because I'm a member of a larger community who also does the same. And now we have a new movement that emerged, maybe not a new, but one that's, the most mainstream right now, the fight against racism. and people just want to subscribe to this, and this helps them, and they have the feeling that they're doing something good, so they just go for it.
Yeah, this is probably the case. I agree with you, because people want to like submerge. I mean, and they're so bored after this virus. But for me, personal choice, I'm pretty much endorse and support peaceful protests. But I mean, especially in the US. But what I don't like is this hypocrisy in terms of COVID, because you should understand that a lot of people sacrifice a lot, and you should respect those people and respect your own choice. To stay at home for like freaking 2 months. This is a lot. And when you sacrifice something, you should respect your choice, and people should respect and understand that this is maybe not the right time in Europe to protest against racism. We can return to this issue later and whatever, but let's not have this, live social experiments with the deadly virus.
Yeah. I mean, we also have to, distinguish between the people who are protesting peacefully and violently. And, well, my take on violent protests is, maybe this is controversial, I will say, but I don't think that violent protests are always a bad thing, but it depends where the violence is directed. Because right now, innocent people are being targeted. But, if it weren't for violent protests, we wouldn't have the abolition of monarchy in France. We wouldn't have the abolition of, serfdom in Eastern Europe.
We wouldn't have the US.
We wouldn't have the US, exactly. So it depends where you direct this violence. Because I think this is a quote from Simone de Beauvoir. She said that democracy cannot be defended with democratic measures.
Yeah, true.
And this is my take on this. So sometimes you have to resist if somebody, stomps into your life and takes your freedoms away. It's okay for you to, fight back. But right now, people who are innocent are being targeted. People are just being, a target of just mindless violence, which has no purpose. And I totally condemn that, and I cannot support this. And I think that people who protest peacefully voice their disapproval, and this is the way to go.
Yeah, this is true, and I guess we are coming to the second topic that we want to discuss. Is just like specifically protests in the US and how they're gonna, we have election year. It's pretty important. So yeah, let's just discuss this issue. And as you already mentioned, I guess people like just generally don't distinguish between riots, looting, and just peaceful protests. And this is this is the problem. Yeah,
it is,
I guess. Because we should be honest, it's not normal when people just use like this protest as an excuse to just rob some shop, or to do some like whatever like that actually harms society. It doesn't benefit anyone. Just want to like for the sake of their own benefit, they want to do as I said, like to rob the shop, for example. And this is a big issue. And I specifically, I'm curious about like this. Democrat rhetoric, because I've heard some like speeches of top Democrats, including Biden, Obama. They all gave some speeches about, and then no one mentions violence. Everyone is like, well, all changes in the U.S. Like happened with like all this broader social context and broader social movement, and should go on, carry on like this legacy of. Martin Luther King, and have like this peaceful protest, but no one mentions that at the same time, when like especially like curfew starts, when like it's after 8 p.m. or some 10 p.m. like it's just a chaos on the streets. People just they also killed, but there's also a lot of violence against policemen. They basically kill them, or they severely damage and severely like they have attacks on policemen. During this time, especially nighttime. And this is horrible, and no one discusses this. And I feel this what can give points to Trump, because what he says, he gets this agenda, and he's still, I would say, brilliant politician, because first of all he won election, and he's still president. Whatever
he still
you
say. And it's hard to ascertain how the situation will influence the presidential election. I think you might analyze it this way, that in times of uncertainty, people look for strong authority. And this is strong authority is something that Trump could give. Biden, not really. Biden is, more a softer ruler, I would say. And Trump is always, let's go and get him. And I think this might convince some people to vote Trump. but I am not convinced that my reasoning here is, flawless.
I agree, because I think Biden is not a solution to this problem. I just don't buy, his candidacy, and I think it's just elite play their own game. Elites, they play their own game, like endorsing Biden, because whatever they want to save trade with China, or they want to do some other, stuff that Trump kind of like tries to solve the issues. And yeah, as you said, I mean, the elections of Nixon was Nixon was elected because there was like so many protests going on in the U.S. and they elected Nixon, and he had this slogan like to restore order and peace, and that's what Trump tries to, utilize this. I don't support Trump. I'm not a Trump supporter, but this is a very narrow definition when you just say, well, there is protests going on, but we won't mention any rioters, we won't mention any looting because it harms our own political stance.
Yeah.
But this is what Democrats do. And this is like pure hypocrisy. And people suffer. You see people suffer because they lose their business, they lose their jobs, and they just see that no one wants to help them. For example, in New York, the first days of the protests, like the authorities basically allowed these riots and looting. They had this policy to just not to fight with them, just to allow those things. And of course people will be pissed. And
of course
this is normal reaction, because I thought then we come back to this Hobbesian society. We need the government because otherwise people just are animals that kill each other or just rob each other or do some harmful stuff to each other. That we need to have authorities to step in and just restore order and peace, because otherwise we would have this perpetual violence against each other.
Yeah, and it's, it is widely accepted in the field of psychology that the feeling of safety is one of the most important needs of a human being.
Yeah.
So if they live in times of uncertainty, of violence, and and of uncertain future, they will look up to some authority who promises to bring just peace and order.
Yeah, and same thing goes to all these politicians worldwide, that they say, well, we are so liberal, so democratic, we support protests, and they don't blame Trump, but they kind of they asked Trudeau about Trump. They had this 40 minutes, 40 seconds silence, kind of kept the silence. And then, again, Merkel endorsed all these protests, but they don't mention that they do the same when something like this erupts.
Yeah.
They did the same in Germany in 2017 when they had this in basically riots during G20, and they had same thing in France when they had these riots.
Yeah, the French police is really, it's not reluctant to crack down on protests.
So they just basically try to use this for their own gains, and this is hypocrisy. And the more I live, the more I understand that Western society is based on hypocrisy, basically, because people say one thing, they act differently. They don't really follow. Especially politicians, not the whole society.
Yeah.
But politicians just say one thing and follow other set of actions, and this is really, really bad.
And also private companies try to profit from the situation to gain publicity by saying, yes, we support minorities, etc., even though their actions from the past speak completely otherwise. Let's not give certain names here, but it happens quite often in corporations and international companies.
Yeah, because it just benefits them because they want to. First of all, it's a good advertisement, right? Because
it is, absolutely.
In the midst of this crisis, and they just say, well, we support all progressive ideas, like Facebook, I guess Facebook and Twitter, and they blocked Trump tweets and stuff like this. Which is outrageous because there's freedom of speech, let people say whatever they want. And something like Amazon, obviously, it's hilarious because Amazon, there were so many articles during pandemic that Amazon basically, so many points, they got people fired because they just told press what are working conditions in Amazon.
Yeah.
They got fired for this. And no one really talks about it anymore, but everyone's just well, Amazon endorses and supports protests.
Yeah, Jeff Bezos is such a nice guy, right?
Yeah, and equality. And this is not right. This is what we really don't understand. And for me, it's the thesis going to be like this. It's just it's the way to manipulate society You just like give them these things, as you said, what you like things that they give them that you can be part of, and this is how they manipulate them. Because otherwise, I mean, Goebbels would agree with this,
Absolutely.
probably, because this is nice because you're still democratic and you're liberal, but you give them some food for their thoughts, like to think that they're the part of the society, broader society. Is how they hook up on this, And
yeah,
this
the
is
feeling
what I
of being
find.
something greater,
Yeah, and no one talks about real problems. I mean, in the U.S., there is a lot of like big issues. I mean, I still endorse peaceful protests. I understand that police brutality is a thing, not only in the U.S., but I guess in the U.S. especially.
Yeah, especially.
It's a thing, and the way they actually killed Floyd, like they killed this guy, is a brutal. It's an atrocity.
Yeah, absolutely. It should be condemned.
Yeah, and but let's not forget that we're in the midst of pandemic and don't have these experiments, life scale experiments with people, and second spike. I mean, I just don't know.
Well, we will see very soon with numbers.
Yeah, and I guess from 7 to 14 days we will see numbers, and
let's not forget that the US is already number one in all rankings about the seriousness of the pandemic. So
the US is especially, but not only. I guess there's still a big chance of starting this spike in Germany and in Europe in general. Europe plans to open borders, for example. And what is scary that now they're going to close. Probably they're going to have second spike. They're going to close borders again.
I mean, it depends because I think the European Commission said that there's no point to keep the borders closed if the state of the pandemic is basically similar in all states of the EU, because it doesn't serve any purpose if the situation is exactly the same in different countries. But for example, if we were to see a major spike in Germany because there were bigger protests happening there. For example, in Poland, protests in front of the U.S. embassy were just dispersed by the police and nobody cared, So I could see a situation where because of, protests happening in Germany, there's a spike in the infections of coronavirus and, the numbers are higher in Germany and lower in Poland. And I can see one country closing the borders to the other again.
Yeah. And then, again, it will affect common people trading with each other, having businesses and travelers, and it can have bad consequences for everyone.
Yeah, both for people and economy.
Yeah. Well, I guess like the last topic. I mean, it's a little bit not in the same direction.
Yeah, not really related, but
surprising.
Important.
Yeah. I guess but it's still in our it's our sphere of interest.
Yeah.
So Russia published its sort of a doctrine of its deterrence. It's an important document because it's like one of the first documents in its own kind in Russia. Yes, they published something the same in 90s, but it's still a lot of time passed. And it's interesting because what they say there, it's what are the scenarios when they're going to use nuclear weapons. And they basically stated 6 scenarios. There's nothing new in this doctrine. I mean, something similar you could find in Russian military doctrine and some other official documents. But I guess what is interesting, I mean, first of all, the interesting fact that they already published it. So it's not really, I mean, it's an interesting fact just per se because states don't publish such like documents very often. Especially that have strategic importance.
I guess they do that if they want to send a message to their, potential foes and enemies, I guess.
Well, this is probably true, but a lot of people, like a lot of scholars and professionals in this field say, well, this is just basically useless because those documents don't work. No one actually, I mean, American officials, American military practitioners, they don't go and just, read these documents before acting. It's not like how it works. This is one argument, as like another argument would be like, yes, but they still have this clear vision when they're going to use nuclear weapons. And it's interesting because there's a bunch of cases that they promise to use nuclear weapons. It does not include specifically cases like someone like gonna use nukes against Russia. This is like kind of standard way of seeing nuclear deterrence. But they're also going to use, for example, I mean, as they in this doctrine, Russia states that they're going to use nukes in order to, for example, it's a different framing, but to de-escalate situation. So with this, there is a military conflict, they're going to use nukes, like basically what they're saying, in order to prevent a war, which is interesting. It has been discussed for a while, this concept of Russian strategy, escalate to de-escalate.
Yeah.
Which means basically to beef up your military capabilities and be able to use nukes in order to prevent sort of large-scale war, which is interesting. And especially American military analysts use this framework in order to depict Russia as an evil country.
I guess you could say Si Vis Pacem para bello.
Yeah, Si Vis Pacem. But this is still interesting question, I guess, for me, because I guess for our podcast, because and all other things you can go and check this doctrine. It's really interesting just to understand in what cases Russia promises and pledges to use nuclear weapons.
I guess this is what we discussed earlier, that usage of nuclear weapons does not immediately imply a global nuclear catastrophe. There could be regional or tactical usage of nuclear weapons.
I mean, Russia is very famous for tactical nukes. Russia deploys a lot of tactical nukes, and I mean, especially dual usage capabilities. Something like the Iskander missiles is a great example, because when they fire Iskander, you basically don't know whether it's nuclear capable or not. I mean, you just don't know.
We just have to gamble.
And when it hits, but I mean, and it still can be low yield nuclear weapon. It's very different.
And I still think, when you have tactical nukes, you mostly target military targets, not really civilian ones. I honestly cannot see any politician in the world, when they face possibility of a armed conflict, I cannot see them targeting civilian targets right away. I think a nuclear weapon would be used to hit a military target, to show force and say, yeah, we hit your military targets, but if you don't chill, you don't back down, we can hit your cities and your population.
Yeah, like Strike Group, right? This is going to be a brilliant example.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just I guess how we're going to finish it. It's just interesting to play with these concepts and just think about when states declare, because they broaden the scope of this usage, and it's already interesting, and I don't think it really contributes to security. Other people going to argue, they kind of, when you have this deterrent, like the concept of deterrence, it actually works and stuff like that. But for me, I would say it only gives this new, when you attribute new kind of meanings to these nuclear weapons. Because for me, for example, the perfect concept is just like this pledge as Chinese have. It's no first use policy, right? Which is basically state you won't use nuclear weapons in any case until another enemy does. Yeah. Otherwise, it gets very I don't know. It's a blurring vision, which is probably very dangerous for the world.
I guess it also relates to the concept that we have in international relations, that offensive war is a crime, basically. Even since back in the 20s, you had those conventions signed saying that offensive war is a crime. And I think, you say, we're not going to use nukes first, but if you use nukes against us, we will defend ourselves, because, defensive war is something that's legitimate.
Yeah, it's legitimate. That's true. And turning to the problem of nukes, I guess, if the country doesn't pledge to, doesn't pledge to follow this principle of no first use policy, there is always a possibility for this country to use these nuclear weapons, and this is what is scary, because I prefer normal conventional war to non-conventional war, and war involving nukes, because the war involving nukes, I think Einstein said, I guess one famous quote, going to be the last war for the humankind, which is not the true thing. I guess they're gonna still, humanity is gonna survive in a broader sense.
Hopefully.
Yeah, this is what they say, these researchers right now say, well, this is not true thing when you say that it's gonna be the end of humanity. Yes, it's gonna be the end of like 90% of people in the world, but 10% of people, like something like 5% of people, are gonna survive.
Yeah, but I guess the notion of humanity as we know it today may not.
Yeah, and this is why it's
humans
dangerous.
may survive, but maybe not humanity.
Yeah, and some checks probably they work better for this issue.
Yep.
Yeah, and on this note, we're gonna end this podcast.
That's all for today. Yeah.
And don't go to the protest. How we can end this?
or if you do, just keep distance, and keep to all the regulations that are in power.
Which is so hard.
Well, it is doable.
It's doable, but still,
if you want to.
Yeah, or just try to protest in some different forms, I would say. And
do not riot. Do not rob innocent people.
Well, I mean, we don't experience this in Europe. I don't know. Like in America.
We don't.
Yeah. Luckily and hopefully so far, I mean, you still don't know. But I guess people most satisfied with their life.
Yeah, and if you're thinking of rioting in Europe, please don't.
So, stay healthy.
Stay safe.
Subscribe to our YouTube, Spotify, and other platforms that we use. And
and we're here with you next week.
Yeah, see ya.